Hello, I'm Anthony. Arturia have just released FX Collection 5, and today we're going to have a look at a couple of the new offerings. We have the Bus Exciter-104, which is an emulation of the Aphex Aural Exciter from the 1970s, and we also have the Bus Peak module, which is a clipper and limiter module. Now, the demonstration that I'm going to give you today is going to use these effects on buses. I'm going to have 3 instances of the Exciter on bass vocals and keyboards, and I'm going to have a single instance of Bus Peak on my master output. It goes without saying, of course, that we could apply these effects anywhere we want. There's absolutely nothing wrong with having a clipper and limiter on just your kick drum or just your snare, but for the purpose of large-scale demonstrations, it's handy to put stuff on the master buses because we can hear quite a clear A-B between them. Okay, this is how we're going to work today. I'm going to press play on this song in a moment, and I'm going to turn off each of the instances of the plugins that I've added to this project. You'll hear a short instrumental section of a few bars before the vocals kicks in. I'll bring in the appropriate effect, so we're going to start off by bringing in the bass exciter. Once we've listened to a small section of the song and you can hear the difference between the effect being on and off, we'll stop and come back and have a more detailed look at what's actually going on. So I'm basically just going to shut up, I'll mute my mic so that we can hear the song nice and clearly, and then we'll talk about it a bit later. I knew I'd start talking again without turning the mic back on. I was just about to say, it's really surprising when you have an effect like this on the master bus. It's basically just brightening the entire song, strengthening it really. When you take it away, how much it sounds like a blanket's just been thrown over the song. So let's go in and have a look at what each one of those effects is doing. We'll start off with the bass bus. So this is our first instance of the Exciter 104. There are 2 separate modules here. One that's concentrating on the bass frequencies, that caps out at 200 Hz. The second one, the Exciter, takes over at 500 Hz and goes up to 10K. So we've kind of got this parametric thing going on where we can pick the frequency range around which our cutoff is going to work. So we have effectively a filter or a focus zone that this Exciter is going to concentrate on. And then we've got some controls that we can dial in exactly the effect that we want. At 60 Hz in the bass module, we're adding some saturation with the drive knob. The frequency knob is effectively where we're controlling our cutoff. So as I move this backwards and forwards, you can pick up the dotted line. It does exactly the same thing. And then we have a dry wet knob for this individual module. So each module has its own mixed control. And then on the master output, we have a secondary mix control, which is applying to the entire plugin. So we're currently disengaged. Let's have a listen to it. Nice, big, thick sub sound, really. It's called big bass for a reason. It's adding that fatness, concentrating around 60 Hz. We'll have one more pass of that introduction section and I'll just mess with some of these controls and hear its different sounds. because I've got this quite low, had it set to 60 hertz. 60 hertz. Sorry, I'm only really emphasizing the very low stuff. But as you heard, as I was bringing it up to 80, 90, 100 hertz, primarily more of the frequency that the bass guitar is actually operating in, I'm enhancing the overall sound. So this is really just emphasizing those low subs. The second instance of the Exciter is on the keyboards bus. I know it's called Bass Mix Reducer, but I've basically tweaked these controls. As you can see, for this instance of the plugin, I've disabled the big bass, so we're just going through the Exciter. Let's mute the effect and get it going again. Now I've pushed this probably a little bit harder than I ordinarily would have done. I really wanted to accentuate that bright feeling, because an Exciter adds new frequencies. The difference between it and an equalizer is that the equalizer will accentuate what's already there, whereas an Exciter will actually introduce brand new frequencies. It's really a saturation module that operates by generating its own frequencies in the cutoff range, the 2 kilohertz range in this particular instance, and then effectively enhances the entire sound. So if I solo the keys and we just listen to them on their own, really wanted that cut, those higher frequency keyboards to cut through the mix, and that's what I'm using the Exciter for. Even on those stabbing chord sounds, everything is just clearer and brighter now. The harmonics knob is turned all the way down, but it is introducing harmonics. It's just as we turn it up, it will do more. It will basically add more harmonics, which is going to introduce more saturation, and it will sound like a more driven sound. Let's have a go at that. So it's distorting a little bit there, because I pushed it quite hard. And now we'll play with the cutoff range. And now to the third instance of the Exciter, which is also just an Exciter. I'm not doing anything with the bass frequencies here. And this is on the vocals, and it's really making these vocals absolutely pop. I'm really pleased with this sound. Let's turn it off and have a listen to the AB.
An endless day begins again. The fog of morning, barely even there.
That's really night and day. It's a little bit depressing how much that's improving the sound, because it means I've not mixed it well enough. No individual plugin on a master bus should be doing that good a job, but that is an absolutely game-changing improvement for me. So what am I actually doing? Well, I'm adding a little bit of saturation to the vocals. You can see I've got the harmonics knob turned up very slightly different frequency range. I'm now concentrating, as you can see, 2.6 kilohertz. And if we solo the vocal sub, we can really zoom in on that change.
An endless day begins again. The fog of morning, barely even there.
So pretty dramatic effect there. And now onto the second of the plugins. This is the bus peak. So this is applying its effect to the entire master bus. The first thing that the audio signal hits is the tone control module. You can see me turning on the graphical display from that button. And this splits the signal into bass and treble, which we can apply independent dynamic shelving limiters to each of those frequency ranges. So I've got controls for setting the threshold of each of these frequency bands, and then the amount of gain that I'm going to add or reduce to it underneath. So once it's gone through the dynamic shelving filter, the signal's then going to head into a clipper, where depending on the knee and character settings, you can basically vary something between soft and hard clipping. It's basically the aggressiveness of how this clipper is going to catch really sharp transients. Finally, it heads into a true peak limiter, which again has its own character controls where we can control how aggressive that limiting process is. We'll listen to a few seconds of the song, then I'll bring it in. You'll see graphically what the clippers and limiters are doing, and then we'll deconstruct it a little bit more.
An endless day begins again. The fog of morning, barely even there.
So in this display across the top, you can see how much the purple clipper is doing to the signal, and then the kind of teal limiter is taking over and applying more control to these two processes. So the clipper is really about catching those very sharp transients. You see the bigger spikes, and we're setting all of these with our different thresholds. So I'm trying to catch, if I turn the limiter off for a moment, we can see the clipper more clearly. The clipper's job is just to catch the really violent stuff, so that the loudest hits. Clipping is obviously the more blunt of the tools because it's more brutally chopping off those peaks, as opposed to the limiter, which is actually attenuating the entire volume of the song. Any limiter, or most limiters, are going to apply some sort of colouring or saturation to the sound because anything other than a brick wall limiter, which is, you know, doing that very brutal cut-off job, there's going to be some sort of harmonic change. But it's the mix between the clipper and limiter, and that's why the two modules coexist. They're really working hand in hand to do the overall job. And it's very much one of those things where you just want to basically tweak these controls as you're listening to the song to really get those transients under control. And then once you've got them controlled, to boost the overall level of the song. So I've reloaded this preset back to the settings that I had initially. Finally, just a quick look at the tone control. I'll get this song running again in a moment and we can have a look at these two controls. This is really doing, as I said earlier, this is shelving limiting. So we're basically splitting the signal into two halves, bass and treble, and we're just applying a different limiting process before we get to the clipper. So this is sort of like a pre-limiter, a frequency-based pre-limiter.
Begins again. The fog of morning, barely even there. And I'm recalling the hours that never end. Then with no warning, the signal turns to red. But in the shadow of passers-by,
once again talking without turning my microphone back on. So once you've reoriented that balance a little bit, then we head into the clipper. So that's what a clipper will do to the sound if you push it too far, because it's just clipping way too much of the signal. That turns into distortion. That's what you get. So you want a little bit of this transient control before we pass it to the final true peak limiter, which is going to bring the overall volume of the song up to what we want. And that'll do us for today. Hope you found the walkthrough useful. Please hit like if you did. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I'll see you again. Thanks very much.